Y'all, what's going on? It's your boy DameSmiff, and so welcome to Musician Talks with DameSmiff. And today's topic is, as you can see on the title card here, your image as an artist. And pretty much we'll just be discussing a little bit of my perspective on what I see from musicians, what I've learned as a musician, and we'll explore some of the professional tips that are out there in the public and see how we can apply them into the future. Okay, so if you like conversations like this, make sure you hit the like button, because this will allow more people to see this content. And if you want to make sure you don't miss my latest video, hit the subscribe button and you will always be notified. So the key thing that we have to understand about image as an artist is that it's less about how people see you and more so about how you want people to see you. Okay. And for artists, this tends to be a bit of a struggle because we usually have like a personal kind of attraction to, you know, people liking us for who we are, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, we're trying to sell music, not necessarily just play music all day long. And so to get that edge, to kind of like develop that difference between, you know, an artist who's popular and cool or a popular, like, you know, friendly person, but to an artist that's actually successful when it comes to numbers, we have to take a look at, you know, what the successful artists and musicians are doing. So one of the things that does take a huge role is your image. So off the jump, I'm just going to give my, you know, freestyle thought, just authentic perspective on, you know, image as an artist. And one of the main things that I've noticed is that we try to find recipes, is what I call them at least, but they're more like costumes and personas that we try to develop and take part in. And usually what I see with younger musicians is that they have more of a hurdle to climb or to jump when they take that approach. So, for example, if you're a vocalist and you want to, let's say, play blues or more southern style pop music, right? There's a bit of an image that comes with that, you know, market. And with that market, you can either step into it with what you deliver, or you can try to adapt or emulate, as I like to call it. And so, what I see a lot of younger artists do is that they'll emulate very, very early on, and they won't really develop their own identity. And that can be a good or bad thing, but the bad part about it is that you won't really know how to create an identity if you developed a professional career off of an identity that works. Okay. So let's say you are a Southern style vocalist already, maybe play in church, maybe you gig, secular music, whatever it is, right? But generally, you fit in with the image of a Southern style vocalist. What can happen, it may not happen to every artist, but what can happen is that a life event occurs. Maybe you want to change your look. Maybe, your look just literally changes. Maybe you want to take a different direction with your music. Maybe you want to tap into a different kind of music, right? The issue that I see younger artists come to is that their career has a demand for the image that they've set up. So instead of that image being authentically them with, a little bit of polish on it, it's more of what I call a recipe. So you can take the recipe of, people's favorite dish and you can change something here or there, but ultimately they do not want it to be a completely different dish. Okay. And so it's a lot harder to change, let's say, a recipe where the main ingredient is very, very large, a very large part of the recipe versus a recipe that has a lot of interchangeable pieces. So a salad in a nutshell can be a bunch of different things. But let's say like a taco can be a bunch of different things, right? You can take a tortilla and fill it up. A smoothie can be a bunch of different things, right? But then if you have something like beef Wellington, like it looks a certain way, right? And when you have like chicken Alfredo, it looks a certain way, it tastes a certain way, right? And so you can change little things, but generally it's not going to change. But a taco or a salad or a smoothie can look, taste, even feel completely different, but it's still in essence is the same thing. So for younger artists, it's kind of hard to navigate which recipe to kind of develop in the beginning. And for artists, I prefer for them to kind of not worry about that early on and really develop skills. And then the image will kind of come within, your life experiences. Because some people, they want to have a clean image, but they don't really live a clean lifestyle. Some people want to have a more edgy image, but they don't really have an edgy lifestyle. So it's better to just be authentically who you are and then polish or enhance what it is that you bring. So a good example of that would be if you're a young vocalist and you make southern style, pop music, or you make country music and things like that. Try and bring value to the market instead of fitting in. Because if you can look at the genre of music you perform or sing in and you're like, okay, it needs this, and you can bring it, then people will value the fact that you can bring, or people will appreciate the value that you bring to their favorite kind of music or their genres, or maybe when you come to the shows, you bring out good energy, right? But if you're more of an artist that brings what the market already has, but you maybe already, or you may do it like a certain way or maybe different, then it's a little bit of a harder road to take an exit off of, because you now have a skill that's tied to a genre, that's tied to a market. It's not tied to just you. So I guess a good example of that would be like when you see collaborations from one genre of music to another, that's kind of what they're trying to do. They're taking two different recipes and they're just jumbling up the genres or maybe the ingredients, and they're looking for a way to bring what both audiences generally want, but with a new look. And the only way that really works is because the two collaborating artists or groups or bands bring their own style. So you can take two trumpet players and tell them to play whatever's on the sheet music, but you can't take two trumpet players and have them play what's on the sheet music a certain way without them having to kind of interpret it, you know? And so that interpretation is the cool part about being an artist, and it bleeds into image and everything. So I wanted to kind of correlate that to directly music because I talk to artists and things like that. But this same thing goes with image. So let's say if you're always seen with like a clean cut beard, like let's say I always look like this, right? You see me with the scully, the hair, and the beard, right? And then one day I come out here and I have a 2 foot long blonde beard, a mohawk, and a monocle, right? That would be A, shocking, but B, it would be something that I would have to kind of allow you to interpret what's going on. And that gray area of your interpretation is something that is not good for business, but really fun for artists. So this is where image comes into play. The idea that you develop an image or have a professional image has been a long standing thing, but it kind of goes with communication as well. So like having that drastic of a change, like if I just had a big blonde beard and a monocle, I don't know what that would communicate to you as a fan or as an audience member, right? And so it's important to be in control of that if you want to be successful in the music business. A lot of people think that they can just be themselves, scream on the mic, do whatever they think, and we're just going to love you for that. But at the end of the day, if you want us to spend money, if you want us to attend your shows, you want us to buy tickets and things like that, you're going to have to actually pay attention to what we react to. And a drastic change like that, I can't imagine y'all reacting like reasonably to that. That would be pretty shocking. So part of what we're going to do is we went into exploring some of this through AI. And, I'm going to talk to my girl Gemini on here, and we're going to see what she says about, I call it a she because, I like girls. But we're going to see what she says about the whole professional image development side of things, okay? And I'm really just going to look at it for what it is and deep dive into it from my own perspective. So let's get into it here. So we are going to whip out Gemini. Boom. There she goes. Okay. So I went ahead and asked it essentially. I'll show you the prompt anyway, so you know how it works. Why not? It says, what are the basics of developing a more professional image, and how can young musicians take advantage of this for their careers, right? So that's the prompt. Gemini went in, she did her thing, and she came out and said, developing a professional image is crucial for any aspiring musician. It's not just about the music. It's about building a recognizable and authentic brand that resonates with your audience and establishes your credibility within the industry. By focusing on key areas, young musicians can significantly enhance their career prospects. So it's kind of what I talked about, where you can have a look for a Southern, pop singer, but you want to make it to where they recognize you, they understand what you're going to bring, and it's something that the recognizability is really the biggest part, because it will transcend a lot of the work you'll need to do in terms of selling your music, right? So you can just have photos or photo shoots, and something like a hairstyle would brand all of those photos and all those photo shoots, and it'll help people kind of like connect the fact that you are in the photo, you do this thing which is singing Southern pop music, and it works. It's really, really kind of like magic, but it works. So, and it says the basics of developing a professional image are as such. So 1, define your brand and unique identity. So find your why. What is the core message or feeling you want to convey with your music? And this should be the foundation of your brand. And we'll stop there. We'll go through each bullet point. So pretty much, what is the core message or feeling you want to convey with your music? And that's what I was talking about with the communication to your audience. You want to really understand, like, if people see you in your big rap group and all of you got guns and hoodies and you're all up there ooh-wopping and shebanging and all that stuff, you're doing the cool stuff. What do you think that tells your audience? Do you even know your audience? Who is on the other side of that camera lens and watching you do this, And what does it mean? If you don't know any of that, then you won't have as much control over how people react to what you're putting out. And this is why image is important. So the next bulletin says, identify your unique selling position. What makes you different from other musicians in your genre? It could be your unique sound, your personal story, your style, or your values. And you see this a lot with musicians. This is usually like the primary thing we do. We'll skip the why and we'll go right to here, where we want you to know our little underdog story, or if you're an R&B singer, tell you that our boyfriend or girlfriend broke up with us and we're so sad, all that other crazy stuff, right? We do all that stuff, but it's really to kind of develop a difference between all the other people out there. Like, this breakup is more heart-wrenching than the others you've ever heard before, or this girl is just, so much cooler than the other singers out there that you see. So that's really what you're trying to do when you're making a unique selling proposition. And then lastly, this is the point that I said, is that you want to be authentic. Your professional image should be a genuine reflection of who you are. That's key. Trying to be someone you're not will likely come across as inauthentic and can be a turnoff to fans and industry professionals. So the hardest part, like I said, for young musicians is figuring out how to navigate that right there, how to be authentically you when you lack the experience, like life experience, to have what you would call an identity. So if you were, because generally the music industry targets like 18 to like 25, 27 year olds, right? That group of people don't have a lot of experience unless they've been through some shit. So you usually will see like people with criminal records or some kind of trauma or an addiction or something like that, or some really, 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 really awesome underdog story being the ones to be chosen because of how much character you have to develop in such a short amount of time, right? So their authenticity is easier to sell. Versus if you get somebody who's like 42 and they want to start, let's say, rapping, their authenticity is going to come from a different place, but that means it'll be relatable from a different group of people and from a different demographic. It's been done before, but it takes a different shape. So what you'll sometimes see is that the younger artists will try to emulate veteran artists, and that's where we can tell it's inauthentic because you're 24 driving luxury cars and talking like you have a whole bunch of enemies. It's like you ain't even been around the world that many times, so it just looks fake. And then on the other hand, you can have the older artists that's trying to act like they're up and up on all the street knowledge and all the new things, and in reality they do this as a professional musician, so they're just in the studio all day. It just looks inauthentic. Like they said, industry professionals can tell because you pretty much are working with people hand in hand all the time. We can tell. So for me, out of this first bulletin of defining your unique identity, I would say start with your why. Find out why you even want to be an artist and perform in front of people and have people clap their hands when you're done. And then go to what of your why is truly who you are. So if it's something like, I want people to, like for R&B singers, they want you to feel, true love or something like that. Well, what a part of true love is authentically you? Because you may want people to feel true love, but you never had it. So your perspective might be something we don't relate to because you've had more breakups than a long-term relationship. So something to think about, something to really pay attention to. So let's get to point number 2, which says we got a lot here. We got a lot here for you. So it says number 2, it says create a consistent visual identity. Professional photography is a good start, where it says invest in a professional photo shoot. Like high quality photos are essential for your social media profiles, websites, press kits, and promotional materials. Your clothing choices and the setting should align with your brand. So a professional photo shoot, don't think too hard about this. If you have any iPhone past like 10, you're good. That's a good enough camera. A lot of photographers will try to hit you on the post editing thing. So if you want to do that, that'll be a good thing to invest in. But as far as like getting photos, more than likely you can do it yourself, or you can do it for very, very minimal price. Higher quality photos are good, but you have to have a vehicle for it. Like Instagram is not a vehicle for it. Your email, Facebook, these are not good vehicles for high quality photo shoot pictures. So think about, cost and logistics when it comes to photography and things like that, because at the end of the day, you are a musician. So photography is not really your bread and butter. But they do have a great point because you do want to have some kind of consistency with your branding. If you paid attention to any big company, a lot of their branding is consistent in terms of how they put pictures out, maybe how the editing of the pictures look and the textures of the pictures and things like that. So it's very important to pay attention to that, but I wouldn't think too hard as far as investing a high amount of, capital into something like that. Fucking Megan Thee Stallion can twerk on Snapchat on a blurry camera and it'll do fine. Don't think too hard about this part. Next thing, logo and album art. Develop a unique and memorable logo. Your album cover, single art, and other visual design should be cohesive and reflect your overall aesthetic. So when they say this, sometimes people overlook this or overthink it. So overlooking it would be like, I don't need a logo. I'm gonna just take a bunch of cool art and then put it as my album work, which can be cool, but 15 years from now, we probably wouldn't recognize the album art to the music. It's a possibility. And then overthinking it could be that some people have, like, back in hip hop's mixtape days, mixtapes started to look exactly the same after a while. And it started to just kind of develop its own look, and it was either you liked it or you didn't. But the issue was that you couldn't really differentiate one artist from another. It was like looking at a bunch of houses in a neighborhood and they all looked alike. It was like there was just no uniqueness to it. So that's more of a, I guess you can say, personal taste thing. But again, just like what we're talking about overall with the image, you want to pay attention to how your fans react to this stuff. And then next, it says maintain consistency across all platforms. Use the same fonts, color schemes, and visual style on your website, social media, and merchandise. This helps build recognition and trust. This is very true. And it's easier on the eyes. Like, your eyes don't have to do all that stuff. That's a pretty straightforward tip right there. Number 3, build a strong online presence. Create a professional website. Your website is your central hub. That's actually very poignant right there. One person, before I go forward, one person made a point to me. It was like, your website is like your business, like your brick and mortar nowadays. So like some people, they'll make a website, they'll go to GoDaddy and do like a little $50, $70, $100 little thing. But if you were to compare your website to like the greatest companies out there, do you have websites for most major markets in different time zones? What about most major languages spoken? What about, do you have security for each of your pages and like backdoors and all this stuff? Do you have a way to pretty much have fail safes for if anything happens to your website, like if a page goes down or if people can't make orders and things like that? Are you paying attention to how technology is advancing for your website? Because you may have last year's technology and the kids are on the new thing. So you could be thinking about a website in your head that could wind up costing tens of thousands of dollars. Whereas most people, when they get into being a musician, they want to make an Instagram or a SoundCloud. So really think about that when you think about crafting a professional website. It doesn't have to be that expensive, but it is that valuable. So pay attention to it. And the next thing, it says it should be easy to navigate and include your music, biography, photos, press kit, tour dates, and contact information. All that cool stuff. So the next tip, it says on the bulletin, it says curate your social media. Your social media accounts are a direct line to your fans. Post high quality content that aligns with your brand. Engage with your followers by responding to comments and messages. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok are excellent for showcasing your music and personality. So this sounds obvious, but a lot of artists get this part wrong. So when you're curating your social media, the word curate means like kind of like craft and like make it a thing, right? So it should look like something. Girls are good at it, but it doesn't really translate into sales usually because the girls are more consistent in the aesthetic and like making it look rather than interacting, which is that very last part of this paragraph, right? So when you're making your content and things like that, a lot of people do want to see your personal life and figure out who you are and things like that. That is great. The issue is that when they do, how do they wind up listening to your music? So what I see artists kind of like either do one or the other of is that they'll have a peek into their personal life, but play no music, or they'll have nothing but music and we don't know anything about their personal life. So what this paragraph can kind of highlight for you, especially if you're trying to get started, is that you want to engage with your followers by responding to the messages. So if you're playing your music on, let's say, TikTok, and you don't talk as much and people start talking to you, as you're responding, the people who consistently talk to you, they'll learn you personally. That way, you're not necessarily, you know, telling people where you are and like about your family and stuff like that. They'll kind of be able to interact with you like a human, right? But on the other side of it, maybe you're super personal and we're all up in your business. When those people interact with you, let them know you make music and things like that. You got to make it like all the way to the sale, basically. You want to basically translate it all the way to them getting to the music. And don't really look at it as like you're selling it. Look at it as like you want to tell people about your music. You're excited to tell them that you got a new song coming out, or you're working on an instrument, or you played at a new gig, things like that. And then it says platforms like Instagram and TikTok are excellent for showcasing. Yes. And so when you get on these platforms, I'm going to bring this in another video, but one thing you do not want to do, don't get on Instagram and TikTok and say, come listen to my music. And I've done this. I've done this for a good minute, but you don't want to do that. What you want to do is just play the music. And the reason we didn't do that for a good while as artists is because we were trying to figure out copyright on social media and whether or not what a live performance and what a stream is. But generally, you can, if you've gotten your music on most platforms like Apple Music and Tidal, you should be able to find it on Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, and things like that, and just perform your music, play your music, and you'll be able to get it out. And that'll help curate your social media so that when people do see you on social media, everything kind of makes sense when it comes to crafting your image. So the next bulletin, it says have a professional EPK or electronic press kit. I've made a few of these before. These aren't as important as they are today, or maybe they change shape. But this EPK thing, in my opinion, before I even read it, could be your social media. Because today, unless you're trying to like literally talk to like a venue manager or something like that, your social media will be pretty much the lightning rod for getting people's emails, attention, or like showcasing anything, especially like YouTube, where you can develop a little bit more of a channel for yourself, right? But it does say an EPK is a digital resume for musicians. It should include your bio, professional photos, music samples, videos, press clippings. This is what you'll send to venues, booking agents, and music journalists, right? So just like I said, so if you wanted to go perform at like Tyler the Creator's Golf Wang Festival, you have to send it to their booking agent, and they'll have to look at your press kit and see like, okay, how many or how much of a impact are you having as far as viewership? How professional are you? Is your image gonna fit in with what we're doing here and things like that? Your EPK can explain all that, which is why I kind of say social media does that, but it won't do that as well if your social media isn't curated for that reason. If your social media is curated just to be, a diary, then it's not gonna work. Like my social media is not gonna work that well for that. I would have to make an actual EPK, because if you look at my social media, it's a little bit all over the place. So that's kind of the key thing to pay attention to. The next thing, it says network and collaborate. Attend attend industry events, go to gigs, conferences, and networking events to meet other musicians, producers, and industry professionals. That one sounds like easy and upfront, but when we're talking about developing an image, there's a bit of a little bit of politics to this. Okay, so let's say you're going to gigs. What gigs you go to will shape how people see you. So if people see you going to like the highest level gigs, that's one thing. But if people see you on stage at the highest level gigs, that's a different conversation. If people always see you at conferences, that's a pretty good thing. But if people see you setting up booths at conferences, that's a different thing. And same with networking events. If you're out there shaking hands and things like that, that's cool. People go to networking events. But if you're hosting a networking event, that's a little different. Or if you're participating in it, And when they talk about meeting other musicians and producers and industry professionals, it's not about just making a big old lexicon of names. It's about knowing who to talk to, why you should talk to them, and whether or not they should be in your circle, right? And the reason you want to do that is because your circle will develop your image. That's why this is a point here. So like if, for example, you're a musician and you're super cool and you're clean and you're a family musician, you play an instrument or you sing or something like that, and all your friends look like drug addicts, it's going to shape how people look at you, no matter how clean cut you are, right? So it's something to think about. The next bullet says be polite and professional. The music industry is smaller than you think. Your reputation matters. Always be on time, respectful, and be prepared. So, like, one thing you can do is, like, just be really good at what you do, like showing up on time, looking good, and playing good, and things like that as far as the image. But when it comes to, like, how you talk to people, how you treat people, and, like, the little things you do before and after a gig and things like that, that helps people kind of like shape how they think of you when they think of your name or your brand and things like that. So let's say you're, Dwayne or something like that. Your name's Dwayne. If every time we work with you, you like are pleasant, you're happy, smiling, and you take like maybe a little extra to make sure the job is done nicely, people will think that when they think of your name. Let's say if your name is Kyle, and every time we think of your name, you have like a bad attitude, you're always late, and you don't really like do any kind of like effort as far as getting the job done. That kind of thing will be what people think of when they think of your name, Kyle. So that's all you really have to think about when you're trying to be polite and professional, is like, how do you want this person to remember you? And again, about it being authentic, is that really you? Are you really polite and are you really professional? If not, then you want to work on that. Don't try to like fake it. And then the next bulletin, it says collaborate with others. Partnering with like-minded artists can expand your reach and introduce your music to new audiences. So like-minded artists will change artists to people, but like-minded people in general is key, because it kind of will like multiply what you're trying to do. Because some people will see value in what you do as a musician and then be able to help you where they see fit. And that's the key thing you want to do when you're thinking about collaboration, is how can you help both people go up, or how can you just help one person go up? Because if someone loses for another one to win, then it's not really a collaboration. It's more like a competition. So just keep that in mind when you're working with like-minded artists. Are you both winning by your you know standards, or are you both kind of just in parallel, just working? You're both just working on music and not really growing and making an effort to see each other grow. So that's really how that works. And when it comes to developing your image for that, the image part is going to be based in how well you work together. So why would I work with you if you did a terrible job working with Kyle? So now we're going to get into how can young musicians take advantage. So out of all the things we went over, we probably went over a bit of it already, but we're going to see what Gemini comes up with to give us advice on how young musicians can take advantage of improving their image and making I guess you can say, a more professional look for themselves. So attract industry professionals is the first point. A polished professional image signals that you are serious about your career. Agents, managers, and labels are more likely to take a chance on an artist who already has a strong brand and a professional portfolio. A well-crafted EPK, for instance, can make a positive first impression and open doors to opportunities like festival bookings, press features, and record deals. So we'll stop here. So depending on how you view your career, this is pretty much a good way to understand the beginning of it. So if you're in school for a musician, where do you see yourself? Like, do you see yourself, just playing your own shows at, gigs that you've built? Or do you see yourself kind of working within the festival circuit, or maybe within the studio recording artist circuit, maybe having an actual record deal? Or maybe none of that. Maybe you want to be an independent musician and just kind of perform at gigs as needed, So you'll be able to understand which approach to take as far as how well crafted your EPK is supposed to be, and how strong of a brand you believe you can maintain to get the results you want. Because some artists, they're cool with just being, regular Joe Schmo and just kind of chilling, and they just play at church every once in a while. But for some people, they want to stand right next to Bruno Mars when it comes to their music. So keep that in mind. The next thing it says, build a loyal fan base. A consistent and authentic brand helps fans connect with you on a deeper level. When fans feel they know the real you, they are more likely to become loyal supporters who will buy your music, merchandise, and concert tickets. Engaging with your audience online makes them feel like they are part of your journey, which can lead to increased loyalty and a sense of community around your music. So I've actually experienced this where like people online, they actually do enjoy having real authentic conversations with you, and it kind of transcends the feeling of being on the internet. So this is where we talked about earlier about actually responding to comments and things like that. People will get to see your personality. Like, oh, I actually like being around this person. And then the fact that you are doing something that they would see is, pretty cool. They want to see more of it. And the only way they can really see more of it is if they support, which you would have to kind of encourage, right? But it's only really working because you're taking initiative. And this is part of building your image. If you don't take initiative to like speak to your fans a certain way or speak in general, you're really missing out on the opportunity there to kind of shape what you want to get from your fans, which could be, them just taking a moment to stream your music or to share your post or share your song. So it could be that simple, or it can be as big as like coming out to your show. Point number 3, create a strong, marketable product. A professional image turns you from just another musician into a marketable product. This helps you stand out in a crowded market. Whether you're a classical pianist or a pop singer, a strong brand gives you an edge by making you instantly recognizable and memorable to potential fans and collaborators. It's not just about the quality of your music, but how effectively you can present and package it. That is actually a great point. And I talked about this a lot of times on the channel, where you can sit in your basement and play music all day long, but if you don't have, a stage, venue, tickets, there's no real reason for us to come listen. So this is actually a pretty straightforward point here. I guess the only tip I can give you as a younger artist is that try not to think that a market is saturated or oversaturated. Try to think of it as, I need to carve a lane. Okay. So you can be a pop singer today, but the issue with trying to be a pop singer today is that you do not want to emulate another. You want to make it your own thing and then build. So somebody could like the way you sing something. Let's say you do a cover of a song. Somebody could like how you sing it, but the only way you're going to build on that is if you have original music. So if you have a lot of original music that you can create your own style and things like that, singing popular music that is in the market will help people kind of notice you, right? And that would be like the equivalent of having let's say like a barbecue contest in a city, right? That's really just to show people that you have the best barbecue sauce to sell. Like, we don't really care that you cook really good. It's just that we can buy your barbecue sauce or whatever, right? So think of it the same with your music. You have a song, and it's a song that you created. It's personal to you. But in order to really get people to notice it, you might have to do a cover of another song. And the way you do that cover should really highlight the original songs that you have. So look at it that way, right? Your music is a product, and you need to make it a strong, marketable product, meaning it has to be marketable to people who have never heard of it, maybe want to hear it, or know they need something but not sure what it is, right? So that's the key thing. And then our last point is to secure better opportunities. A strong professional image can lead to better gigs, higher paying collaborations, and more valuable sponsorships. When you look at when you look and act like a professional, people are more willing to invest in you and your career. For example, a brand with a strong aesthetic can be a great fit for merchandise deals or brand partnerships that align with your image. And this is pretty straightforward as well. Depending on how you look and how your, social media and websites and things like that look, this will be attractive to different companies and venues and things like that. I'll give you a tip as a younger musician, though, that is not really on here. When they talk about like collaborating, part of it is the culture of your business, like the business model. So for some people, let's say in hip hop, it's cool to kind of like make a song, put it on stream, and then people kind of just sell merchandise, right? Whereas if you wanted to land a spot on a Disney film, then how you release this song may be a lot different than what they would require from, a hip hop record label. So that's some of the things you're gonna have to think about. Like, is my website, secure enough with the data it has to deal with working with a universal records? Is the metadata on my music organized enough to really withstand a catalog like currency or something like that, So you really got to pay attention to the little things, but all those little things help make up the overarching image of your brand. So that's what I have for you today, y'all. This was a Musicians Talks. I didn't want to take up too much of your time, just something quick. So if you enjoyed this, make sure you hit the like button, like I said. And if you want to catch the latest videos, make sure you hit subscribe. And this is pretty much how you can help yourself and maybe another young musician develop their image going into 2026. So let's get it. If you enjoyed this,